You're listening to Art Affairs, episode 55. Today I'll be talking to Martine Johanna. Alright, so my name is Michael Faith, and this is Art Affairs. Art Affairs is my attempt at shining a spotlight on the many wonderful people that make up this amazing art community, featuring conversations with artists, gallerists, curators, telling their stories. You can dig through previous episodes, complete with show notes, at artaffairdspodcast.com, but the best way to stay plugged in is to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're really enjoying the show and want to help support what I'm doing here in an even bigger way, check out the Art Affairs Patreon. Not only does it give you an opportunity to help keep the show going, but there are several community-oriented benefits as well, like getting early access to episodes and suggesting questions for upcoming guests. You can find all the information about that at patreon.com/artaffairs. You can also connect with the show on Instagram and Facebook at Art Affairs Podcast. All right, so today's guest is artist Martine Johanna. Martine comes to us from the Netherlands, and her paintings are primarily figure-based, and specifically female figures. But before she became a professional painter, she had an entire career in the fashion industry. We talk about how she got into the fashion industry, what motivated her to finally make that leap into painting, her upcoming solo show in Amsterdam, and a whole lot more. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Martine Johanna. Martine, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you on.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here.
All right, awesome. So let's dive into your background a bit. And I know, reading up on you, you were born and raised in the Netherlands, where you live today. But what part of the Netherlands did you grow up? Like, what was the area like where you grew up? Was it more of an urban or a rural area?
No, very rural. I have to laugh a bit because I lived in Amsterdam for 12 years, and I actually moved back to the area where I was born. I was born and raised in a very small village with lots of churches, and it was very conservative and small. But my parents were quite modern. They were a little bit more outlooking to the world. But as soon as I left the front door, like in my house, everything was quite modern. And then as soon as, behind the front door, there was a different world, and where there were a different set of morals and just a different mindset. And that's actually not that bad. I mean, when I was really young, it was just really nice growing up in the countryside, in nature. And, I was like half boyish, half girly. So I would like climb trees and build things and do like adventure play. But then when I got into my puberty, then the rules changed overnight, and I couldn't hang out with boys anymore. I write about this also often in my work, and because I also write sometimes, and it's that just pissed me off because I had more restrictions, than boys. So
how did it come that your kind of forward-thinking parents ended up in a village that was so opposite of the way that they, their mindset?
I think it's a family thing. So my family was really family-oriented. I know they left for a little bit to more, the big cities. But they went back again to take care of their parents. And it's like a very family-oriented place that we come from. My grandparents lived one street behind us.
Oh, wow.
And they were there every day. I don't know. I thought it was quite a suffocating thing, sort of. My mom also didn't work outside of the house, she just took care of us. We were a family with 4 children, and she took care in the mornings also of my grandparents, and then took care of us. And she was like the sort of typical housewife. But I knew, like deep down, she had sort of ambitions, but she always thought less of herself than the things she was capable of. But it was really an inherited insecurity from family, like the females to the females. It's like a really tough thing to break through. So on the one hand, they were modern, like interested in culture and in like museums, or we would go to visit castles and stuff. So I have a very romantic soul. And we would go on holidays and visit cultural things. That was on the one hand. And then the other hand, it was like really traditional, family first. Women were housewives and men would like work hard, and my dad would be gone a lot. And it was like really traditional. And she always had that sort of battle between tradition and something more. But the something more always lost. So I took it upon myself as soon as I could think for myself, like to break that barrier.
Yeah. Did you ever talk to her about what she would have maybe done had she felt the empowerment to do more?
No, I tried, but she was very closed off about that. So she never would really share what was on her mind. And we had a difficult relationship because it was, I'm a ADD kid. I always was, like and she was very controlling. So it was a difficult upbringing because I would get into trouble all the time. And she really wanted to control me. And I have 2 brothers. Like my sister already left the house when she was younger, like when she was 18. And she's 9 years older than me. And my brothers were like the silent type that would sit in the attic, like in their room, full of boy stuff. But I'm really expressive. So I wanted to, talk and find out things, and I just do a lot of stuff more actively, and then sometimes retreat to my room. But so I was more there in her face, and it wasn't always a good thing. Yeah.
Where are you on like the amongst your siblings? Are you the youngest, middle child? Are you oldest? Like
I am the surprise sibling.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm a half of a twin. So my twin brother and I were the latest, like the addition to the family. And then they expected 1 child.
Oh, wow.
So my brother was born, and then I was still in there. And nobody was getting me. Like it took half an hour before they were like, "There's another one."
Oh, man. That's insane.
And I always joke around like, yeah, that extra half hour that made me go to art academy, So it did something to my brain. Maybe the oxygen levels were a little tight, but no, that's just kidding. I mean, you learn a lot of humor when you are the weird one in the family. So are you the only one amongst your siblings that pursued something artistic? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we all have something like mad scientist in us somehow. We're all very curious, but in a specific field, and a lot of self-taught things also. And but I'm the storyteller of the family. I really like all the stories and the backgrounds also from the family history, but also myths and folklore, and like anything that's a little bit on the edge of society. I love, and I just want to know more. But that curiosity is quite extreme for the family where I come from. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. I mean, did that creative spark hit you at a young age? Like, were you artistic even as a kid?
Yeah. I was always either making something or drawing or making a huge mess in my room or overly curious. Always when my pets would die, I would dig them up from the garden to see what they look like after a week. I know it's weird, but it's like I just wanted to know everything, and know what things were made of, and I wanted to draw it also, and I used to draw a lot, but almost always figures. But also, I just bought a book. It's an old book from Robert Farah. It's called Unicorns I Have Known, and I would always draw like fantasy animals. And unicorns were like top of the bill. Unicorns with wings and like things that didn't exist. And I was always curious between reality and not reality, like what we make up and what is real. Yeah, I think it's just really interesting.
Did you know that you wanted to be an artist, like professionally as a kid? Is it something you thought, or was it something you just did in your spare time just for fun, and it wasn't until later that you maybe pursued it as a profession?
No, it was just always there, because I even asked my mom, like, what is somebody called that draws for a living? And then I learned the word illustrator. Nice. But then the female version, you have that like in Dutch, like the illustratrice, it's called it's like the female version of illustrator. So that was what I knew. I didn't even know like the word artist or something. So it was just like, somebody that draws pictures for a living, that's what I'm gonna be. And everybody else had like nurse or fireman or, that type of stuff. But I had that word nailed.
Nice. Was your parents supportive of that? Did they encourage that in you?
Yeah, I think they were already glad that I didn't become like a serial killer or something, something weird. But no, they said I could go like to art school after years, when you go older, and, they found out like she's not going to be forced into anything she doesn't want. And then they were like, okay, you can go to art school, but you have to choose a direction that will earn you money. So, and I also liked making clothes, just sitting behind the sewing machine and making stuff. So they said like, why don't you do fashion design? Because then you can earn money. Free arts was not allowed. Like I couldn't be a painter or anything. So I was like, okay. So that's what I did. And I also had fun, So I didn't learn the traditional skills of an artist, but I did learn the concept phase and creation, but it was more applied art. Yeah.
So when you went to Art Easy University in Arnhem, your main focus was fashion?
It was, yeah. So
okay.
I've actually studied to become a fashion designer. And that's what I also was for a couple of years.
Yeah. I was reading about that, but I didn't know that was also your focus in school. Was that like? Is there a specific degree track that is for fashion design?
It's the same as free art, actually. So they had, you also get a lot of the same subjects, and but the difference is that you made like applied arts is more for usable objects. So there are also people that do like interior design, stuff like that, but then on an autonomous way. And that was also with fashion design. It was autonomous. So it had nothing to do with the industry so much, but more as a self-expression. So fashion design as art. And I love that as well, because you can tell a lot of stories with what you wear,
Yeah.
And it is also, it's the same as like first impressions. When you see someone by their clothes, you already know so much without them even saying something. I have to say that changed a lot since the internet, because, now everybody influences each other, and then it becomes sort of a monogamous thing. Like everybody does a little bit the same, and there's not a lot of like subcultures anymore. So I think that, that's a little bit, monotone. That's the word that I was looking for. It's become more monotone.
Do you think that's kind of stifling progress because everybody's just looking backwards instead of trying to push the envelope forward?
Yeah, and it also applies to art. Because I often see like people imitating people and imitating, and there's a lot of imitation and a lot of like common taste. And then, when the metaverse is coming, it's gonna be even more like the taste of, the most people becomes the most important. And I like everything below that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I like everything that's a little bit different. I like ugly as well. I don't, I don't even care for that word. I like it when it's interesting. So I don't need images to be necessarily beautiful. It can just be really great in composition, or it can be something that triggers you, makes you feel really bad, or I don't know, just something that triggers. And sometimes I feel like not a lot triggers anymore when I'm, on the gram, swiping images, because a lot of things start to look the same.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. Like that's a conversation that I've had with a friend of mine about the music that I listen to. I want something that has an emotional impact on me. I don't care if it's approachable or if it conforms to some kind of predefined structure. It could be all over the place, but if it evokes an emotion in me, then I adore it. I fall in love with it. So I think it's the same with what you're kind of saying. Is it doesn't necessarily have to be traditionally beautiful, but if it creates some kind of a response from you and triggers a reaction, then it can be powerful too,
Yeah, it sets a mood, or it just triggers something inside, that you feel like. I mean, I have this sort of folders with music also, in like streaming services, but like moon gazing music or something like that. I really like it when like sound or images, they trigger something really specific, a specific mood and or emotion that you're in. Yeah. It doesn't need to be all like angry or or super sad, but just, yeah. And I like it when things confuse me or just really new things. Yeah. That goes for anything like images, sound, film, or even reading text or, yeah.
So you received your bachelor's and your master's. Was your master's also focused in fashion design?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, and I'm laughing because it was like a scapegoat thing that I did that. Because after I studied, I directly went to Paris, and I wanted to become an illustrator because I still really felt like I wanted to draw something. So I went on an internship, and I know the lady right now also that I stayed with. She was really nice, but I noticed that there already that I am too autonomous, like a thinker, to be commercial. So, and I went there for like an agency that does like forecasts for fashion. And when I was in meetings, this was Paris, and I couldn't speak French. And when I went into meetings, they would just like, they noticed that I couldn't speak French like quick enough, or I couldn't grasp it all. So they would just, all of them turn their backs to me.
Oh, wow.
And then ignore me. And I was like, oh shit. So sorry for that. So I did draw pictures, but it was just too much. I have a problem with authority already, and that whole pick order thing. I don't know. Is that also English? Pick order?
Pecking order? Yeah.
Pecking order?
Yeah.
I don't like that. So then I didn't know what to do. And also, I have to say, my life got a little bit sort of slowed down because I had to deal with trauma from my youth. I've been through terrible things, and I'm still dealing with that right now, actually. So 'cause I've had a fantastic life until now, but I also had to deal with violence, and those things are also a little bit incorporated in my work, that sort of feeling. But I drift off. That's ADD, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Where was I? I have to go.
Talking about your journey to master's
The master's,
degrees.
yeah. I thought the master's degree was really interesting, though. It was a little bit more on the business side, but I really liked having more discussions about meaning and about, constructs. And so I thought that was really interesting. So that's also where I did my thesis from, about social constructs for women. And after that, I went to be a fashion designer, but I couldn't deal with office environment and hierarchy, and I was just too much of a creative mind to be. I did well. I mean, they were happy with me, but no.
What kind of stuff did you design while you were working in the fashion industry? Like, what was your main focus?
I designed female clothing, so for the women's wear department. And it was a nice brand. It was like a little bit from the streetwear, when fashion was still cool and you could use it as expression, and sustainability or other things. We didn't think about that much. It also was quite a small brand, so it was pretty fine, but they were struggling with growing and becoming more commercial. And then with that came a lot of pressure, and the pressure was put also on the designers. And then you have to be the type to be commercial thinking. And I just wanted to make cool stuff. So that didn't work out. And also I started living then in Amsterdam on my own. Before that I had a relationship, but it ended, and I was on my own. I had to make a whole new set of friends. And I did that by also going outside, meeting people that were doing street art. And then I was like, yes. And so I became the one girl in a band of brothers that did like street art things. And we just hung out, and it was so cool to me because I got completely accepted without being in danger at all. It was just like I was one of the guys.
And amazing.
It was an awesome time. And I really fell in love with creating imagery. And that's how I came to also exhibit. So that was the start of my art career. And then the job I was in, they made me choose between doing only fashion design or quit.
Really? Wow. They forced you to stop pursuing, like they wanted you to stop pursuing your own personal work? Mm-hmm. Wow. I bet that was an easy decision for you.
Yeah. Well, I asked them to, so I could work less. So I want to work 4 days instead of 5, had the same salary, like the same amount of pay. And I would make more street art. I told them. And it was like a week later or so. And they called me in and they were like, either you get a promotion and you become like the main designer, or, that's it. And then you have to quit the street art stuff and only focus on the brand. And I was like, I quit. So
Yeah,
and I was super happy. I came out of the office. My colleagues were like, you got the promotion. And I was like, no, I quit. I was so happy. And then I was like, an hour later, I was like, oh shit, now I have no income.
Yeah,
so
now I gotta figure out what to do for money.
yeah. So yeah, I sold a painting a month or something. And then I started to, after a couple of months, somebody asked me to go and teach at a HBO in Amsterdam. So I did that as a side job for a while. Yeah, a pretty long time, by the way. But I liked that a lot better. And then I made all the art I could do. And yeah.
So did you like doing mural work? Like, is it something that you'd like to do more of?
Well, no, I think no. I get cold very quickly.
Okay. Me too.
But no, I was there, once with like a spray can, and my cool friend from the UK was there. He's a really good street artist, and I was like pressing that button of the spray can, and my fingers were freezing, and I was like, oh God, no, this is nothing for me. It's not for me. I love the whole environment, and I had a couple of years, but we were all young, and we were all looking for, who are we, blah, blah, blah. And, everybody else also ended up more in an artistic job or, being art director or some fashion designers even, or, other stuff. And I think it was just a kickstart into art for me. I really love what some people are doing with like murals outside, but I'm just too old for that. I know that people can do it for you, but also I really love making like bodies of work, like for one exhibition to tell a whole story. And I'm also a homebody. Like I really like to spend days on end in my studio on my own. Yes, I loved to hang out with those guys, but I'm not a team player. I'm way too focused on myself, on my own thoughts. I'm distracted easily, so I'm just an annoyance in that sense. So, yeah.
Right on. So since you didn't focus, so your focus was on fashion during school, and then you worked in the fashion industry, and it wasn't until after you left that you started really embracing your own, painting craft and developing your the voice for yourself.
Yeah.
How did you go about that? Like, how did you go about developing your style once you got out of fashion and had the time to really think about what your style even is?
Yeah, the thing is, it went all organically. And I think it has to do with my thought process that I already had as a kid, that the curiosity about how the world works, but also how the psyche works. Like, I'm really interested in how minds work. Why do people make some decisions, or how do you view the world, and from what perspective, and why is perspective of somebody else different, and that stuff. So when I was started to draw, I had sort of, it's a bit weird to say, but when I was on my own, I had my own sort of sexual revolution for the first time in my life. And so the first drawings I made were really about, setting free my own desires that I didn't feel I could have before that. So a lot of my work from that era is very sexually charged, and very much like the females are completely in sort of an ecstasy, but also completely in power. And so it has a really strong sexual vibe. And then with that, also the handwriting was very organic and very swirly. And I love that about making my work, is that you can get lost in the details. It's like a swirl either of colors or of lines when I draw. So it's an own world, you could create, and it's somewhere between reality again and sort of surreality. But it's not really surreal, but dreamlike, and it sort of absorbs you. And that's how my style came to develop, really from an internally driven, subjects.
Okay. Awesome. So in 2010 is when you had your first solo show. I think the gallery was Spooey 23 in Amsterdam.
Yeah, it's an address. Yeah. Yeah, it was like a gallery / shop, and it was, just a sort of pop-up thing. And I worked with students there, so I wanted to immerse them in my way of concept thinking. So I worked together with students that sort of made the whole environment for my solo exhibition. Oh, wow. And I made the work. And That's awesome. Made the whole, and the whole environment they made. And they also, had made clothes that fit my concept and other products that fit my concept. And it was called Souvenir, and it was very much about sort of remembrance and from my youth, like little things from my youth. Like I said, digging up skeletons. So there were a lot of skeletons actually in that show.
That's amazing. So how did you start making some of those like relationships with the gallery community in Amsterdam?
Most of the times, I have to say, I've been really lucky that galleries would approach me, because I would be online already from the start with like social media outlets, and people would see my work and then were like drawn to it. So I started off with a pop-up gallery that only did pop-up shows through Amsterdam, and that was really nice. And that's how I started exhibiting. And from there on, I met a gallerist in Amsterdam. She's not, she doesn't have the gallery anymore, but she had a really huge space, and I just went there, and she already knew my work, and that helps. Yeah. And I was like, you want to work together on the show? One time she was like, yeah, sure. And then I did a duo show first with somebody just to try it out, if the audience that she had would fall for my work. And it was like a perfect match. And I loved working with her. She had like a real business savvy mind. Nice. I don't, but she did. And it was just a perfect combination. So, and I loved making like those big shows there, because it was a big space for Amsterdam. It's always very small there. So, yeah.
And it looks like in just a few years later, in 2014, was when you first started showing outside of the Netherlands. How did you make, I guess, the jump outside of your own country and start showing in the US?
Yeah, I was asked. It was just really like that. So galleries would approach me, and then I do have to say that sometimes I said no, because I didn't think the work would fit the other work that they were showing, because I always check it out. If it feels right, because sometimes what I had struggles with in the beginning was I had that label of street artist, but I'm not a street artist. It was like a short period, and it was just, most of it was like messy stuff, but I had that label, and it took me a long time to get rid of the label, because that wasn't something I'm not that tough. Come on. I sit inside, mostly. I like inside. Like I like wearing my slippers and my, jogging pants. So, I thought it was a sort of a mislabeling, but I got asked, also by Spoke Art, and it was just nice. First group exhibitions, Zach Tudor asked me once for exhibition, group exhibition. Also such a nice guy. And it was like that. And I love working with nice people. Like, so I only work with nice people. If somebody is too aloof or like too, I don't know, if it doesn't feel right, I don't work with them.
No, that's good. And I know you had your solo show, first U.S. solo show in 2016 at Spoke Art. And obviously you've shown several times with Ken and Hashimoto Contemporary and Spoke Art both. And of course, Ken's been on the show and is a friend. So I guess, is having a strong relationship with a gallery or a handful of galleries, is that an important aspect or component of your career?
Yes, but mostly I think it comes from when people are really caring about your work and careful, and they really want to showcase you because they believe in something, that's what I go for. As soon as I notice, like, because you know, artists talk also with each other, and when there are a lot of bad experiences or you know, there are also horror stories. I have been lucky until now, but you know, it's very important because it's trusting somebody. Yeah, you know, I'm overseas, I'm in the Netherlands, I have to ship my work out, and then I have to, you know, hope that they don't screw me over. Or, you know, when they have to restretch canvas, for instance, that they do a good job because they care about the work. I mean, it's so important, you know. And also when you sell work, that you get the money is also important. So sometimes that doesn't happen, you know. It can go really wrong. But you have to be... Yeah, I always check out who I work with and...
Smart.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to what you were saying about only working with, you know, good people.
Well, and it's also, you know, you can notice it already in the first communications when people are very nice or not. And I know it's an American thing to be extraordinarily enthusiastic. I mean, it's a culture thing. So, but, you know, when the third email is still good, then you know you're set. I have to say also in New York, I work with Massey and Klein, and they are so awesome. They are like the most wonderful couple, and they just are really invested also in development and where you want to be a few years from now. And they want to think with you for projects, but they don't steer you, you know, they let you, they trust that you can do what you can do, but you can ask them anything. And and integrity is also really important. That after the show is finished, you know, you aren't dropped from their minds, you know. So I do regular video calls, for instance, with them, and so, you know, not too regular because I'm not regular at all myself, but just sometimes, you know, check in, how's it going, development, are you happy, are there projects you want to do, or, you know.
That's awesome.
I think it's also important to have that. It's not just a selling place, it's more than that. You grow together. Yeah. Preferably. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing that you have that relationship with them. So let's dive into the work itself. And you know, we've talked a little bit about some of the themes that you developed as you were starting to develop your own artistic voice. And your obviously your work is figure based and almost exclusively female figures. That's their primary focus. So I guess how did it come that female subjects became the primary focus of your work?
Well, I remember my mom saying when I was like 10, "Why do you always draw women? Are you lesbian?" She asked me when I was like about 10. Yeah. I was like, I'm not a lesbian. I don't know what it is, a lesbian, but I'm not that. I like boys. I still do. I love men. Sorry. just I adore men. But I'm just, it's like, for me, it's sort of a reflective thing. Like, I'm a female and I really paint the characters that are in me. Now, I'm not schizophrenic or anything, but it's just, I have to, you know, as a woman, you have so many personalities inside of your head. There's so many different sides. And that comes probably from, you know, hormonal things, you know, every week you're a different person. I mean, some women are more stable, but I'm not. And I really like the world, seeing the world from my female perspective, like how I am built and how I am built to experience the world. So that is what I paint. I really paint my own perspective and also on who I am, but also how people view me. And then me is, you know, symbolically, because last month I painted a version of myself and I didn't like it. Sort of portrait almost. But I really like models, using models better than myself. Otherwise I have to stare at my sort of version of a face all the time. It makes me crazy. So, yeah.
Do you find that your work is narrative in nature? I know earlier you said you really love storytelling, and that was one of the things that you really liked about some of the stuff you did with fashion.
Yeah.
Do you try to incorporate a story into your work and tell a story through your work?
Yeah, I do, but I always notice that when I'm painting, I leave out a lot of stuff. So then the figure becomes the main focus. But maybe that's my version of abstraction. But I also write stories sometimes, and I have made a book recently that's still not out because of COVID, but with images and a little bit of text. And in my work, there's a lot of dream aspects and also memories or just the state that I'm in. But it does have backstories, but I don't always tell them because I think it's also important that people feel their own thing with my work. A lot of the times people see their own stories in my story, and oftentimes they are similar, but I don't like to steer everything. Yeah.
Do you feel like it helps you to at least yourself understand that backstory that you're trying to represent, even if you don't depict it entirely in the final image? Does it help you to kind of grasp that in your head as you're developing the piece?
Yeah, I'm actually more working intuitively. So I feel a certain way. I write down words that have to do with how I feel. That's how I start. And I am reading certain things, but I don't pin it down yet. Then I start working on several. Maybe I'll do a photo shoot. I have a big archive with photo shoots where I've photographed friends, and sometimes I have something in mind, and then I ask my model or friend to wear certain things and then do certain positions. And while I do that, and I ask them questions about themselves.
Oh, nice.
So they become, and I also play a little bit strange music in the background. And then I sometimes ask them to do a little dance or something, or I ask them really personal questions or that have to do with the subject that I'm thinking about also. And or I just say the words that I've written down. And then when they follow that direction, afterwards I work on the photos. I put them in compositions, I change them, I Photoshop things, and that's just like a raw starting image. From that I make a drawing, and then from the drawing I make a painting, and then it comes out completely different than the original thing. And then afterwards I write everything down and it falls all into place. So
oh wow. So yeah, so definitely takes a journey from start to finish, and it's interesting that so I guess the stories that the models tell you, and you're asking them specific questions about their experience. Do you blend those two experiences together into what ultimately become the pieces? The original kind of concept that came from your own kind of reflective spotlight on yourself, along with whatever their experience is. Does that kind of become a merging of those two?
That's a good question, because I realize when you ask that, like, I know. I always take my own perspective back again. But I have to say that some of the subjects, like, it's just some small talk sometimes about the subjects, or I just want to get them in a certain mood, and then I talk about something specific. But I don't go really deep because of my ADD, I get so easily distracted. I would probably forget to make photos and then go into... When I do portraits, I seldom do, but sometimes I make portraits. And then I had made a portrait of a friend a while ago, last year, and she only had a couple of months to live. She has passed away already, But we started talking during the shoot. I made beautiful photos because we got into this beautiful conversation about life and about, what things mean. And then at one point I noticed I stopped photographing. And she was like, okay, we're here now for an hour. Maybe you should, use the button. And then we started again. But it was a beautiful portrait afterwards. And she still got to see it. And then a week later or so, she was gone. So I was happy she still could see it. And she also said, this is really me. And then they also used the portrait on her funeral. And so that was a big compliment.
Sure. Have you found it to be difficult to line up models for your photo shoots since COVID started?
Well, I've always found it difficult to line up models because I was listening to a couple of your podcasts lately, also with Linnea, I think.
Yeah.
And she also had a hard time, shooting people is awkward. Yeah. I have the same awkwardness. So I don't like to, I find it really nice to work with friends or people I already know and that feel really comfortable in their body so they can, I only have to steer them a little bit, and get into the conversation. But if you don't know somebody that well, there's always this awkwardness between you and the person is very, very self-conscious because they are oh, I'm going to pose for a painting, and you have to, for what I make, I have to break through that because I want a certain look in those eyes and I want, it's always in the eyes also. You feel that there's more there, but if people start posing, there's a distance. I don't like working with different models a lot, so I only have a couple, and sometimes I make up people that are not real. So if I'm out of models.
That's awesome. So, color is a big kind of signature element of your work and something I think that makes your work recognizable almost immediately just from your use of colors. So, they're very vibrant, very kind of prismatic is a common word I see used to describe, the colors that you use. Is that something that you really put a lot of thought and intention towards as you're creating your work?
Well, it's smart if I started doing that because when I stare at somebody's skin tone or face, and I don't know if it's a artistic habit or something, but I see a lot of colors. I don't see skin tone necessarily. I see blues, I see warm tints. You see that often also in oil painting where you have all those hues. It's more difficult with when you do acrylics, but I just see a lot of color, and also color is something that comforts me from my youth when I was younger, before, pre-puberty, before the world came to shit. When I had that freedom, the summers were all colorful and everything was rainbows and butterflies, and I just thought the world was a miracle and a big fairy tale. And I really like to hold on to that feeling with colors. So that's why it's so much in my work, because it's almost like an addiction, like a fix.
Sure.
I love when people make more, demure colors or more toned down, but I'm not really able to do that. So.
Do you find that you use certain colors for specific feelings or specific emotions?
There's this boy that I painted that is sort of blue. And I do use it for a mood thing. So I use more blues when I feel more blues. It sounds so corny, but it's true. It's almost like a song. But and more warmth when it's more heated up, and dark when it's more dark. It's not like a riddle. I think that's pretty, one-on-one.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, straightforward, yeah.
You also use a lot of abstract elements and abstract backgrounds, almost so that I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about your characters often being in this liminal state between their dream world, their dream state, and like the real world.
Yeah.
Is that is your use of those kind of abstract elements intended to kind of isolate the figures so that they are in kind of great detail and everything around them is kind of more abstract?
Yeah, and so it draws all the attention to the figure, but also sometimes, there's furniture that has like multiple legs, or there's things going on in perspective that's not right, or shadows that fall the wrong way. I really like that sort of surreal thing, and it has to do with the psychics of the main person. So in one of the shows at Massey and Klein, the show was called Balancing Act, and there's this figure that's sort of crouching, and she's wearing sneakers, but she has like a plissé skirt, and when she would stand upright, her head would fall out of the painting, but because she's like crouching, she still fits into the box. And that's sort of then symbolic for how she feels in sort of current society. Like, okay, the one group says I have to be very feminine. The one group says I have to be tough and like don't give a shit about, being manly or tough or wear sneakers or and then the other one has to be telling me, or somebody tells me I have to be strong, but you also have to be vulnerable. So all these things are put in this painting, and you can see the lines cutting through, and it's almost like a puzzle of a person. And I think that's how a lot of people feel. I don't know how it is for men, but for women, often it's like you're trying to adapt to how the world sees a female on that day, because it sometimes shifts so quickly, and everybody's trying to adapt because of this rotten social media thing. And what's the attention thing of the day? What's the hype today?
Yeah.
How should I act today? What is? Yeah. So I don't know. So that show was a lot about that, and then the abstract comes into play. Yeah.
So are the abstracts elements that you add in the backgrounds, it sounds like, and even the poses of the characters, it sounds like it's almost an external expression of their internal feelings in some way. Yeah,
it is.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, always is, yeah.
So you almost exclusively use acrylic, obviously for your paintings. What is it that you like about acrylic specifically as a medium?
Yeah, exactly the different thing that Linnea said. It dries super quick. I have the attention of a goldfish, although I'm much smarter. I have very high IQ, but my attention span is very low. So I have to work really quickly. I make quick lines, and I work hours and hours on end because I do have sort of super focus when I paint. But I want to paint that painting and finish it. I can't work on it for weeks. I have to make it the way it's in my head, and then I need to work on. And if I work in oils, I tried it, but, my hand touches the canvas and I'm, more covered in paint than my actual painting. I step into stuff and it's a big mess. I know my studio looks really clean and everything,
yeah,
but I need that because my head is constant chaos. So the painting with acrylics is just really, I can do it quickly. I can do it for hours on end. It's drying while I'm painting. It's awesome. And in the end, like the next day I can, varnish it and it's ready to go. So that's how I like to work the best. Yeah.
Awesome. I know I read early on that your main medium of choice was drawing, and then at some point you kind of shifted and realized, well, hey, I want to actually get into painting because maybe I'm missing something. I guess what did you feel that you were missing from drawing that ultimately led you to having an interest in painting?
So I had to do that. I started to talk Dutch there. Denk ik. it had to do. I started drawing. I started sharing those drawings, and then I gradually came into that street art thing, and then it became painting. And like first with black paint, I would paint like rough, big figures, and that was a totally different energy. And I always had real strong energy, and I would I could let go of the energy with painting. I still do. Like it's much more energetic to do, but with drawing, it's a very intimate, calm down version of making art. So for me, drawing is more like calm. I can draw, and it's like I can almost fall asleep when I tell about it. But when I paint, it's like strong. It's like a more of a, expression thing, and you get lost in all the colors, and it's like a different high. Yeah, it's just a different drug, really.
Between the two of those, now these years later, is there one that feels more like home to you?
I really love drawing when I'm in a certain mood, and I really love painting when I'm in a certain mood. So it's still there. I also like write, or I make music, or I still restore clothing. I need all those things to be there, and drawing or painting is no choice because they are also connected. I make the drawings before I make the painting. It's part of the book that I was making that also has like a written story. It has the story that's in images is different slightly than the story that's written, because when you make images, it's a different way of storytelling. And I'm also making an audiobook and of it, and that's different again, because when you talk, you also talk differently than how you write. So I really love all those languages, and painting and drawing are two different languages from the same family.
So do the drawings that you make as part of your process to ultimately make a painting, is that drawing very different from what the painting ends up becoming? Or is it do you have most of it already kind of locked down at the drawing stage?
No, there are big differences sometimes, even in the story. So the focus becomes something else. And in the drawing, it's also, you work with dark and light, and it's a very simple way of constructing the composition stays more or less the same. But all the details become different, because the pencil asks for the swirly hair and all those details you get lost in. But when I work with colors, the colors draw all the attention. Also, when you're painting, you make different decisions just because it's a different effect you work in. Yeah. For me, that is, yeah.
Sure, yeah. So shifting gears a bit, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your teaching experience. You mentioned that earlier, that after you left the fashion industry, that you kind of supplemented your income for a while teaching. I guess, how did you ultimately get into teaching? How did that even become a thing that was an option or available?
Yeah, I hope I didn't tell this story before, but it's a funny thing. Like, somebody asked me to substitute, and so I was like, yeah, sure. And then it was for a thing called Inspiration Book, and where you had to do research for like artists and just makers of any kind. And then I had a class of 30 people. I had never taught before, and it's like a higher education thing. But then also another teacher was ill, and that class with 30 people also came into my room.
Wow, so I had like 60 people?
60 people, not enough chairs. And all I had, it was 4 hours, and all I had was a slideshow with fragments of my most inspiring films. And a lot of those were like underground horror and like really things those kids had never seen before. I mean, the kids like, 20. It was okay. They weren't traumatized or anything. But I showed those fragments, and they were completely in shock. after half an hour. And I was like, yeah, okay, now you go outside and find your own inspiration. So that was my half hour of teaching. But
Nice.
they were super excited because I explained a little bit, but I was like, oh shit, I had to do 4 hours. I'm done after half an hour. But I really liked the experience. And actually the students also told, of course, the manager like, it was so cool with Martina. And so then I did it again. And then at a point they asked me to actually, be there like 2 days a week. And then I started diving into what is teaching, and I learned a lot, and it was so cool to do. It was all about making concepts and storytelling and visual storytelling and drawing meaning from history and, our own cultural narratives. And so that was all up my alley because I had this huge interest in things, everything. And they just got infected by my enthusiasm.
Nice.
And developed their own stories. And that was the best experience ever, working with students and how they developed themselves and were their own unique person. And I never talked almost about my own art thing. I was just anonymous. And I loved that it was just about them. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Were you able to keep up with your students like after they graduated to see how their career kind of went?
Well, yeah, no, not. Yeah, I have a little bit of contact still, but Instagram and stuff. A lot of them are doing their own thing, and also I can't keep up because I'm too busy with my own interests and my own work. And but sometimes, I check out what they do, and they also contact me, and they are still following my work, and because in the end, of course, they find out what I do, and then it was awesome when I left. It was like 2019, just before the pandemic stuff, and they all wrote me emails and with long thank you letters, and it was so cool. Yeah, it was awesome.
Do you think it's something? It sounds like it's a fulfilling thing for you. Do you think you'd want to ever do that again someday?
Yeah, maybe. But I found out that doing art only is really nice. Although I loved teaching, it is a little bit lonely, and I do miss the side where it's not about you all the time, because that is the only thing that I don't like that much, that everything I do is constantly about me, and then in Corona times it becomes worse. So you're in your own little bucket of me, me. And it can become really narrow. So I miss it sometimes, and maybe I do want to do it again, but then maybe on the art school. Because this was art related, but also, more fashion and, and more commercial. And I just like the concept phase too much. So I would really love to teach on the art school if I ever do it again. Yeah.
Awesome. So for all the art school people out there.
Yeah.
So
who knows?
Let's talk about what you have coming up. I know that you, one of the more immediate projects that you have on your plate is this residency in February with the Jaunt. So tell me about that. Like, what does that entail?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, so a friend of mine from my street art days.
Nice.
He's going to laugh when I say that, but because we sucked as street artists. But he's also still very creative, and he has that magazine going, and is so cool what he does. But this one is in Dutch nature. And I mean, it's laughable when you're from the US, but our nature reserves are much smaller. But still, you can hike for an hour or maybe 4 hours until you hit a cabin. And then in that cabin, it's a protected area, so nobody else can be there. Because it's from a Dutch nature reserve, so you're not allowed to go off path or anything or be in those areas. But when you go to a cabin like that, you can. And then I'm going to be there a week, and then I'm with the inspiration I get from there. It's off-grid, so no Wi-Fi. Already getting anxiety. But then, I have to cook on a wood stove and just be on my own with the wolves, because we have wolves recently in Holland. It's so special. You're gonna laugh, because in the US it's like bears and stuff. And then afterwards, inspired by that week over there, I'm gonna make a screen print that's like a limited edition, inspired by my week over there. But also I'm gonna do some sound recordings for my book, for the audiobook, because there I can't hear cars and stuff, and maybe a plane, but just record sounds that fit to the book I made. Yeah.
Very cool. So in addition to recording sounds while you're there, do you think that you'll try to draw and paint there as well? Or are you mostly just absorbing the kind of the experience so that you can later apply it to drawing or painting?
I'm gonna take my drawing stuff with me as well, and make drawings over there, and think about my life and stuff. Yeah.
And how long are you going to be there? Is it for a week or?
Yeah, it's like for pussies. Like, sorry, but it's like a week. Like, I'm not gonna die. Like, it's not gonna be like, she's been there for 2 months right now. Or is she still alive? It's gonna be just like for 5 days or something.
Very glad. Have you done any residencies like this before? Is this your first
No,
one?
because I'm a chicken, so I don't. No, the thing is, like, it sounds so. I'm not rich in any, like, I don't have massive wealth of money, but I do have a good life, and I love my own bed.
Yeah.
I love my own bathroom. I love my own stuff. I have like loads of books and of music and things, obsessions, and I love my own world so much that I don't even like to sleep over at friends. So no,
I can relate to that, honestly.
It makes me feel uncomfortable already when I have to brush my teeth in somebody else's sink. So it's not. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely not an adventurist in that sense. I'm a different kind of adventurist. Yeah.
No doubt. So another big thing that you have coming up is your next solo show, which is opening on May 21st in Amsterdam. So I guess what can you share about this new body of work?
Yeah, it's been put forward to the 14th because of course, COVID things. So I have a week shorter. So happy. And I still don't know what's going to be about. I work pretty tightly to my deadline, and I'm in the pre-phase of ideas and thoughts, and I have to say it's also really hard in this time, because I don't see, main fascination is people. I live in a village now, and when somebody comes by on a bike once a day, I'm like, a person on a bike. So it's not like I have to be more amongst people, but that's really hard because we just came out of a lockdown since yesterday again. And I'm like, people,
It's
how
weird.
was that again?
It's hard. Like after being alone for such a long period of time, just getting back to being social with people again. You have to like learn that again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Like, I'm in therapy. I'm not gonna go into that, but I'm in therapy, and it's awesome. I'm a good analyst, but when somebody does it that's professional, it's so much better. But I'm looking forward to my therapy sessions just because I have a different person in front of my face. I'm like, oh God, it's so nice to have another conversation. A different type of. Even if it's about me again, which is a bummer, but it's.
You mentioned that you're kind of early in your process, so does that mean you don't know what the name of the show is going to be? Is that something you decide on early, or do you tend to name your shows at the very end?
Yeah, so the gallery, how do you say that? The gallerist asked me the same question yesterday, and I was like, I don't know yet, but I'm now thinking to name my to name it The Luminous Void.
Nice.
It just sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it for sure. Yeah.
But it's also the feeling I have, like, it's absolutely wrong that we are in this situation and that you're sort of confronted with yourself constantly everywhere, and there's not a lot of input of other people. And if it is, it's through a screen or something. It's still with a wall, you know? And on the other hand, it also makes your life so different and your life view so different that it's also illuminating somehow. So I'm now sort of on that point where I'm like, how can I do something with that idea? But what it's going to be, I don't know yet. So it's really early stages. Yeah.
Awesome. When you're working on a body of work like this, do you typically develop a theme like up front and then work within those boundaries, or do you start working and then kind of let the theme organically become whatever it becomes?
It is this feeling like, you know, with the title, and then I start from that, and then, you know, with what I said with the photographs, or I'm going to work with archival material now, and then it starts to develop, sort of by itself. And then in the end, I know it all, because you can't know it all up front. I think it's also stifling, because then you're sort of forced to make these images fit the concept. I'd rather have the concept reviewed when you're done, and then it fits together even more perfectly just because you let go of all restrictions, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. Because it's gonna be there. It's already there, but you just can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little bit...
That's awesome. So May 14th is the new date. I guess anything else coming up that you'd want to put on people's radars? New events, prints, stuff like that?
There's going to be a new print with People's Print. We just emailed back and forth, like I made something, and that's going to come out, I think, I don't really know. It's coming weeks or so. It just happened. So, and in December, I'm going to have a solo exhibition in New York again. And hopefully I'm going to be there as well, because I miss New York so much. Like, I miss the US. That's been the worst thing of this all, is that I couldn't go. Because I would go like twice a year. So, and so I'm going to be back and going to have a solo exhibition there. And my work has been bought by a big art collector that has a really cool collection, and that has affiliations with Guggenheim Museum and Museum of Harlem Modern Art, I think it's called. And I'm just really happy with that. And maybe I'm going to speak at an event of theirs. And
awesome.
I don't know. But that's all like future stuff, and how that's exactly going to develop, I don't know. But it's really cool to. Also, again, super nice people. I had like a video call with them, because that's what we do now. And it's such a great talk about being female and, you know, having certain types of experiences, and not want to be calling it survival or something like that. Because, it's an interesting dynamic. So, I'm happy that... that happened.
That's awesome.
A little bit fake, but
the show in December in New York, is that at Massey Klein Gallery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So where can people follow you online to keep up with all these new things you got going on?
Instagram, but Instagram is a little bit of a nightmare. Of course, because of all the only thing I see is almost commercials and hardly anything I follow on the timeline. So same goes for my work. People don't see it almost anymore because it's pushed out by, you know, your supermarket, local supermarket, or other stuff. But there, if you want to follow me there, you can see like how I'm developing work, because I'm going to share that in the coming months. And otherwise, I have a website. It's myname.com. Not literally, it's martinejohanna.com, but yeah. That.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, and this is something that I like to ask everybody. Who is one artist that you'd like to see me have on the show?
Oh, yeah. I don't think she's not into my work, but I'm into her work. Robin Frances Williams. I love her work. We have a lot in common in interests, I know. And I really like the way she develops her work. And she has a sort of anger that really is appealing to me. Like this sort of attitude, but also very sensitive and very something fragile and beautifully poetic. And you see that in her work as well. So yeah, I'd love to see or hear about her work. Yeah.
Awesome. Great suggestion. Well, I'll definitely check her out. Martina, thank you so much for doing the show. This was really a lot of fun. I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, I liked it as well. A lot. Thank you. Thank you for asking me. And maybe see you in the future. If we're still alive.
Yeah. I know. So that's it for this episode of Art Affairs. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Martina. I really enjoyed talking to Martina. It was really interesting to hear about her background and the way that her parents were much more forward-thinking than a lot of the village outside of her house when she was growing up. Due to them, leaving for a while and becoming exposed to, the city life and a much broader perspective. But even so, they were still constrained in a lot of ways by their cultural norms and gender biases. Subject matter that would later play a big role in Martina's artwork. And then also how all her siblings shared this similar curiosity and passion for exploration and discovery, but all applied in different ways to do different pursuits. She definitely seemed to have a really full year ahead of her, with this upcoming residency project with the Jaunt, and then 2 brand new bodies of work for 2 solo shows. The first solo show is going to be opening on May 14th at Kokenboos in Amsterdam, and will possibly revolve around this idea of luminous void. And then in December, she's going to have another body of work for a show at Massey Klein Gallery in the Lower East Side of New York City. Be sure to register your interest for those shows with the respective galleries so that you can get a copy of the preview once they come out. And also follow theirs and Martina's social media to stay up to date with the latest on these shows. So thanks again to Martina for joining me today, and thank you for checking out the show. I'm truly grateful for your support. And just a reminder, one big way you could help out if you're really enjoying the show would be to check out the show's Patreon. You can find all the details on patreon.com/artaffairs. And as always, you can contact me through my website at artaffairs.podcast.com or on Instagram at artaffairs.podcast. So until next time, be good to yourself and be good to each other.